Good morning. Hmm. The title for today is The Final Love Line of 2012. And the blurb that I wrote goes like this. Last night's love line with Margie and friends was the second one of the month and the final one for the year. Got a letter here. We decided to close out the year with this at the first love line the first week in December. For me, this was a different experience than the many that had gone before. As I peered into the eyes of my friends, I often had the sense of losing my identity in the energy of the connection. I also had the sense that each individual represented more than only the man or woman standing in front of me. Of course, this gave me much to reflect upon. All in all, may be a whole lot more than most of us have realized. Yet it may well be the consciousness of unity many will experience on a much greater scale than ever before. The night was unusual in another way that I didn't put in the blurb. I've had several long days in a row. I've been working on a project that I will reveal in its time. However, I decided around 5 o'clock to lay down for half an hour and meditate prior to getting everything set up for the meeting. I had already put the food out and prepared all the food and everything, but I hadn't set up the chairs, I hadn't turned on the porch light, and all the other things that I do at the beginning of every meeting on Wednesday nights. So I laid down at 5 o'clock and I was meditating on a subject that I will share again at another time. That's another rather unique concept to me. I did share it at the meeting last night, but I think I'm going to wait and share that in another sharing at some point in the future. In any case, I fell asleep. And it was like 6:35 or something like that. I don't know the exact time. I could check my caller ID to see when the call came in. Uh, but I got a call from Margie saying, "Ron, where are you?" Here they were gathering at my front door. The lights were out in the front porch. The lights were out in that end of the house because I hadn't turned them on yet. It was still daylight when I laid down. And so there were no lights in that whole end of the house where the meeting is, and only one light here in the back in my office. That was the only light on in the entire house. And so I said, "Give me a minute," so I could get my clothes on and get out there and open the door for them and let everybody in. So I was still had cobwebs in my in my mind because I was awakened out of a sound sleep and a dream. Although I can't tell you what the dream is, I don't remember. It totally went away, but I knew I had been dreaming. Uh, so it set a stage for me where I was almost still in theta consciousness, in the dream state, which carried on and seemed to linger uh, a couple of hours into the evening. But as I shared in the blurb, from the very first person that I stood before. Now let me just back up a little bit and explain. A love line is a line. It's two lines of people that move, and everybody faces everybody else. There's no talking. There's music playing in the background. You connect heart to heart. Each person puts their hand over the other person's heart. Then the left hand goes on top of the other person's hand on top of your heart, so that you're connecting heart to heart and you're looking eye to eye with the other person without saying a word. Sometimes tears happen, sometimes laughter happens, sometimes humming happens. Um, Sometimes you get reflections of past lives. Sometimes uh, the other person brings something up in you that you maybe weren't that aware of, and it comes up for you uh, because you see something in them that you realize is in you. And so it's like looking into mirrors or windows of the soul, as we've long expressed. But from the first person that I stood in front of, I had a sense, more than I've ever remember having before, of my identity just melting. And the question kept coming up, well, who am I then? Who am I then? Because the connection, and throughout the experience of the love line with each person, the connection seemed to be at a level that I was almost, it seemed like a part of me was forgetting who I am. Maybe a release of ego more than I've experienced before. I can't put my finger still on exactly what that feeling was, but it was a feeling of a different kind of identity than I had realized in the past, and I still haven't fully realized it, but I became aware of it. And I thought that was really it was fascinating to me. But the other fascinating thing was, as I looked at each person in the room, one at a time, I had the sense that I wasn't just looking at one person. And what triggered perhaps that feeling was something that someone had shared prior to actually starting the love line itself, as we were sharing at the very beginning of the meeting before we formed the lines. And that person had an experience on the 21st where she felt that someone was saying to her, I don't remember her exact words, but in any case, the overall sense was that she had people pulling on her to heal the past, including some people that that she connected that she didn't especially like. But that triggered perhaps the experience that I had as I looked into people's eyes, that I was seeing more than just the man or woman, as I said, standing in front of me. That each of us, not just those of us in the line, but each of us on the planet, represent other individuals, past, present, and perhaps future, than just our own unique self as we experience ourselves in 3 dimensions. And I suspect that this is what I was experiencing was going into the 5th dimension, where there is a merging. There's still identity there. It's not that you totally lose your identity, but you see your identity in a different way than perhaps we see it most of the time. We generally see ourselves as separate because that's the 3D consciousness. That's the 3D paradigm, if you will. It's seeing separation and experiencing separation. My sense is that more and more as we move into these new energies of 2012, of 2013 actually, we're going to find ourselves more and more able to recognize the bigger picture. And I'm talking about the bigger spiritual picture, the interconnectedness of the web of life and of all life. One of the things that was expressed last night by more than one person, actually, but by one person mostly, the biggest expression was that he was disappointed that more didn't happen on the 21st. He expected more visible change than what actually occurred. And so did I, and so did many of us. So there was a sense of disappointment. And yet at the same time, others shared that there's definitely been this shift. I mean, a shift that is perceptible by your own experience. You are able all of a sudden to see things that you weren't able to see before. You're seeing more with the eyes of the heart, the eyes of love, the eyes, again, of unity consciousness. And this is the big change, perhaps, that's occurring while we're anxiously looking for the changes in the geopolitical world, in the economic structure of our planet, in the wars and the violence and all the other things that are surrounding us as the love pushes all this stuff to the surface and makes it more visible and makes us more aware of the demons behind a lot of actions that take place on earth, actions and reactions. The energies of selfishness and greed, they're all there for us to look at, and they're all part of each of us. Even if we think we're enlightened, we still have dark shadows lingering. And this process will be ongoing in the days and weeks and months, hopefully not too many years before we actually see tangible changes. But we're moving from the 3D limited perception to a higher perception of 4D and 5D and higher dimensions of awareness. And this is really what the awakening is about. It's about expanded awareness, expanded consciousness. It is a paradigm shift from the competition to the cooperation. And it's more and more what we will be experiencing. I'm convinced of it. How the 3D world interacts with the 5D world will also unfold step by step. Maybe there won't be the big cataclysm or the big earth-shattering event. To me, there almost has to be. But I watched, and as I listened to people share their experience after the Love Line completed, I realized that what's really shifting is people's consciousness, people's awareness. We are perceiving things at a higher level, at a more interconnected level. And this is love. This is how love is overcoming fear in us. We still acknowledged our fears. We still acknowledged the shadow that's coming up for each of us, as we always do in workshops. There's always people that acknowledge, well, you reminded me of this person that I have an issue with. And so anger was coming up. And you have the opportunity as you reflect in your own silence with the music playing in the background, looking at the eyes of the person standing in front of you, holding their heart space and letting them hold your heart space. You see reflections that are greater and things come up. This is why we can't film the Love Line, because how do you put that on a film? How do you put those experiences on a film? You can't. You simply can't. It has to be experienced. Anyway, I believe I'm going to leave you with this today. I thank you very much as I head off to my meeting here this morning, and it'll be another day of reflection, I'm sure. May God bless each one of you. May you be aware as you awaken to new energies. May you be aware that the world is being engulfed in greater light and greater love than ever before. Namaste.